Hey guys, welcome back. But if you are new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you stay up to date. All right, let's jump right into it. So today we're talking about traditional training on one hand versus functional training on the other. This is not about which is better than the other. However, we'll talk about the pros and at the end talk about where each falls short. And then maybe you can decide which may be best for you. I will also share my perspective as a trainer. I have a unique perspective, having dealt with a wide demographic of people. So I'll add that into the mix, and then that may help you decide, hey, maybe this one's for me, maybe that one's for you. Anyway, okay, let's jump into it. So first, we'll start with the definitions and the origins of each. So, what is functional training? Functional training is how we move on a daily basis. It's our movement patterns every day. So we have 5 basic movement patterns. Let's say 7, because I'm going to get called out for not including the bonuses. But to keep it simple, we'll start with the first 5. We all squat, we all hinge, we all push, we all pull, and then the 5th functional pattern is rotation. The bonus 2 movement patterns, we gait. So gait includes walking movements, jogging, running. Gait is about getting us from one place to another. And then the last bonus, the 7th movement pattern, would be lunge. A lunge is a step forward, to the side, or backwards with one leg, and it includes the dropping of the hip with that step. Now, the origins of functional training stem from rehabilitation and used to help people regain their motor function. Now, on the other side of the coin, we have traditional gym training. So, traditional gym training typically involves the isolation of one muscle at a time. And traditional gym training, its origins come from building muscle as well as aestheticism. So, that is looking your best, that is looking big and tight, muscular. All right, moving on. Let's talk about the primary goals of each. So, with functional training, your primary goals would be to improve the efficiency of your daily movements. We went through those 7 basic patterns, and it's also about enhancing coordination, flexibility, and balance. And then, lastly, functional training is about reducing the risk of injuries by improving our biomechanics. Now, on the flip side, traditional gym training benefits or primary goals would be for muscular hypertrophy. So that is building muscular size in individual muscles. Other benefits would be to build specific strength in specific muscle groups. And again, as that word always gets me, aesthetics, looking as good as possible. Moving on, let's talk about the equipment and setting you can find each of these. So, in terms of functional training, the equipment you'll find with functional training would be body weight, stability balls, kettlebells, plyometrics, and think about specialized gyms. So, when we think about functional fitness, I think of F45, I think of Orange Theory Fitness. And then on the other hand, with traditional gym training, the equipment we're typically using are free weights. So, free weights are barbells, dumbbells, machines, benches, racks. And of course, traditional gym training is done in the gym. Moving on, let's talk about the types of movements. So, with functional training, your typical movements are multi joint and multi muscle group movements. So, those are compound movements, working multiple muscles or multiple joints at the same time. And the emphasis would be on squatting, pushing, pulling, rotating. On the other hand, traditional gym training often involves isolating single muscle groups at a time. So think about a bicep curl, which is just an elbow flexion where we're working the biceps, or a tricep extension, also elbow flexion, working that one muscle, or a hamstring curl, knee flexion, working the hamstring. So we're isolating one muscle at a time. And the benefits of functional training would be to improve overall functionality. Like I said, lifing, getting better at our daily patterns, making daily tasks easier, maybe moving pain free. And this is also about functional training is about improving athleticism and fitness. Whereas with traditional gym training, you're optimizing for muscular size or muscular strength. but those are not necessarily the most athletic people. If we had an apocalypse, I would bet on the CrossFitter or the functional trainer surviving because they might be more nimble, more athletic in terms of cardiovascular fitness versus the traditional gym goer might be bigger and more gorilla like, but they're going to be slow and typically only trained for those very specific movement patterns rather than functional movement patterns which we perform in our daily lives. Another bonus about functional training is they typically include our stabilizers and our core muscles versus with the traditional training, unless you're purposely including them, you know, you're not necessarily getting them. With almost an exception with powerlifting, but powerlifting is its own. I don't want to throw it into the mix, but with the powerlifting, we get compound movements which do engage multiple muscle groups, including our core. And we're working some stabilizers when you're, you know, squatting, for example, using your core, using your inner thighs, outer thighs. But again, powerlifting is another story. We'll stick to functional training and traditional training. Now, let's finish off with some of the drawbacks of each. So, with functional training, you may not be optimizing for muscle definition the same way you might be with traditional gym training. And then also another drawback with functional training is it requires proper technique, otherwise you increase the risk of injury. So throwing CrossFit into the mix, because CrossFit is similar to functional training, different but comparable in this example. So one thing I do not like about CrossFit is you throw in very complex compound movements in a circuit style or in a race fashion in a timed setting, which is not good. Those movements are very dangerous because they're so complex. They incorporate so many muscles, so many joints, so many movements. So for example, Olympic lifts like cleans or clean and jerks, those are movements that you should warm up with for 20 to 30 minutes and then only perform that movement focusing on the form, not throw it in, next to other movements in a CrossFit class in a race, because that highly increases your risk of injury. And then now, kind of like I said earlier, a potential drawback of the traditional gym training would be you're not necessarily training for athleticism and fitness. You're more so leaning towards aestheticism. So looking good or working individual muscle groups rather than the whole body as a unit. So which one should you opt for? Now, let me just throw in my experience first. So, as a trainer, I've seen a myriad of demographics. So, I've worked with youths, teenagers, and adults. What I've seen is in terms of traditional bodybuilding, those are my younger clients. So between ages 16 to 25, typically the males, I'll say 90% of my young clients would lean more towards traditional gym training where they're focused on getting bigger chest, bigger biceps, bigger legs. So focusing on hypertrophy and aestheticism. Whereas my older clients, meaning 25 plus, are typically they're leaning more towards functional training. So I'm thinking of my 70-year-old client. My oldest client was 71 years old, and he was not training for aestheticism. He was training to move better and to move pain free. So we're working on functional patterns. We're not working on his biceps or his abs. And like I said earlier, with functional training, we might be focusing more on coordination and flexibility. So think mobility, think about other things that are broader or greater than simply building the muscle in terms of size, because your life in terms of movement incorporates much more than strength, but it's strength in different ways, such as mobility, being flexible, being able to be mobile. So if you're trying to get better at lifing, I would say lean more towards functional fitness, but not giving you my opinion. I'm just giving my experience and then it's up to you. I just want to say the philosophy I believe in is movement. Movement is medicine. I feel better when I move, and I know you will feel better when you move. So do whatever you want to do, whether it's traditional gym training or functional training, but just get moving. I believe our bodies are meant to move. We feel so much better and we heal ourselves when we're moving, not when we're sedentary and pretty much dying in a seated position. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a thumbs up, and I will see you tomorrow. Peace.